here to discuss Iran war situation and Iran war updates. We analyze the social media footages and reports purely from educational and documentary point of view. The reports and footages from social media can be unverified at times, but we analyze them from purely documentary and educational point of view, strongly following and adhering to YouTube community guidelines. Now, starting the news that President Trump thanked the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, adding that it has been very helpful, unlike NATO, while discussing the war with Iran. President Trump has said that Saudi Arabia has been very helpful to US, and he thanked the Saudi Arabian government, and he thanked the Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He thanked him, and he also said that Saudi Arabia had helped US, unlike NATO. And he said this because NATO hasn't joined the war, and NATO also hasn't joined to open the Strait of Hormuz. So President Trump has said that Saudi Arabia has been very helpful to US in this war against Iran, and he also said that unlike NATO, Saudi Arabia has helped US a lot. And basically, President Trump has criticized NATO and said that they haven't helped the US in this war, and they haven't helped the US in opening the Strait of Hormuz as well. So with this, we move to some more news, and more news that an Israeli attack on the town of Al Hania in the district of southern Lebanon has killed at least 7 people. And US Secretary Marco Rubio says that the Iran war could end within weeks after meeting G7 leaders in France. Though tensions remain high over escalating risks and oil prices. Marco Rubio said that this war isn't going to be a prolonged one, is not going to be a prolonged one, and this would be over in weeks. This is the similar statement which Jerry Vance, the Vice President of America, gave, and both of these people, Jerry Vance, the Vice President of US, and Marco Rubio, both of them has said that this war is not going to be a prolonged war, and this war would end within a matter of weeks, and this war would end within matter of weeks. And while saying this, the war has entered in its 30th day if you live in the eastern part of the world, and if you live in the western part of the world, the war is in its 29th day. So basically, the war is in its 29th or 30th day, depending upon the location in which you are. And still, Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance, the Vice President of US, has said that we'll wrap this war in a matter of weeks, and this would not be going to a long war. And with the J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio saying this, I assume that, and this is our analysis, that I think the option of sending troops and invading Iran and having boots on ground is basically kind of not yet decided upon, and US hasn't decided upon whether they would be sending troops and invading Iran. And with the statements which we are seeing, and when Jerry Vance and Marco Rubio are saying that this war would end within a matter of weeks, and they haven't, it would not be a prolonged war, so I can assume that and this the chances of ground invasions are very low, and the chances of ground invasion are very low, because also it is that the ground invasion would be very difficult to maintain and sustain, because US would be needing 500,000 to 1 million soldiers to fight IRGC and Iran, and IRGC is also 1 million strong, and they have mastered the guerrilla tactics. They know that when it comes to the guerrilla warfare, the US is not good, because they have studied the previous war which EU has US they have studied the US which US has the previous wars which US have fought, and they know that in Vietnam and the guerrilla warfare, due to guerrilla warfare, the US was forced to move out from Vietnam, and similar was the case. The US was forced to move out because Taliban were fighting a guerrilla war, and basically the US, the IRGC is already prepared for a guerrilla war, and they know that they would be fighting a guerrilla war against the US troops. So also US, the terrain is not favorable to US, and it's not an easy terrain, because the terrain is not an easy terrain because that it is a mountainous region, and also there are big deserts and islands, so it is not an easy terrain for US to have troops on ground there. And even if they invade successfully, in order to maintain the force of 1 million to half a million to 1 million forces, in order to maintain that force, and in order to sustain that ground invasion, US would be needing a huge amount of money, and approximately trillions of dollars would be needed to sustain that ground invasion. Already US has spent nearly $30 billion in this war, and they are spending $1 billion approximately a day on this war, and they have already spent $30 billion. So it would be very costly war for US if they think of the ground invasion. So also we can assume from the statements which Jerry Vance and Marco Rubio are giving, that it would not be a prolonged war, and they would wrap up this war within weeks. By these statements, I can assume that a ground invasion is not on cards. And with this, we move to some more visuals and some more news. And today, I have a question for you, guys, and please do take part in the poll. And the question in the poll is that, will Houthis be able to inflict damage to USA and Israel? This is our question of today's live stream and poll. And please do comment and take part in the poll. Will Houthis be able to inflict damage to Israel and US? And the question today is relevant because let me give you the summary why I have posted this question. Is that this is because Houthis have Houthis have entered this war officially now, and Houthis have joined this war on side of Iran against Israel, and Houthis have fired missiles towards Israel. Houthis have ballistic missiles as well, and they do have good drones as well. Iran had been supplying them and aiding them militarily and also financially, and Houthis have good amount of an arsenal of these ballistic missiles and drones. So they have now joined this war officially by firing missiles towards Israel and drones towards Israel. So with Houthis joining officially the war is now overstretched for Israel, and they are busy at multiple fronts. Israel is fighting against Hezbollah, and that is Lebanon, in Lebanon, and obviously they are fighting from day one against Iran, and now Houthis have started, have jumped in, and Israel will be busy now at this front as well. So there is a three front open for Israel. So this is a tactic from a strategy and plan by Iran, that they wanted that Israel should be kept busy on multiple fronts, and to overstretch their military and to overburden their air defenses as well, and so that Israel should run low on these interceptor missiles. This was clearly an Iranian strategy, and that's why they didn't make Hezbollah jump into the war at once. They waited for a week and two, then Hezbollah jumped into the war, and then with the 3 to 4 weeks passed by this war, and the Houthis have jumped into this war, and that's why I have this question in the poll, that please comment and tell us that will Houthis inflict damage to Israel and US or not? And I will be reading your comments, and please do take part in the poll as well. And if you have questions, please do also give reasons and logic to support your answer, and please do ask questions, and I will be happy to take your questions as well. And the other news is that you have heard probably about the Strait of Hormuz, that it has been closed by Iran, and it is the 30th day of the war, and the Strait of Hormuz is closed now for a month. The Strait of Hormuz has been closed now for over a month, and Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz for now over a month period, and there is another strait. You all know that the Strait of Hormuz carries 20% of the trade happens through that strait route, and with this closure, the 20% trade has came to a halt. And when this came to an halt, now there is another strait, that the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. That Strait of Bab el-Mandeb lies near Yemen, and the Houthis are controlling Yemen, and then Houthis are controlling Yemen. So this is my analysis, and I feel and I assume, and I'm seeing that you will be hearing news in a couple of days about that Houthis have announced that they will be closing the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. With the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb is important. It is as important as the Strait of Hormuz, and the Houthis do have a capability to close this Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. They have a good arsenal of ballistic missiles, rockets, and drones, and they also have small speed attack boats, and they can close this Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, and 12% of the trade of oil and other things is by this trade route, and 12% of the global trade is basically from this trade route of Bab el-Mandeb. So I assume, and this is our analysis, that Houthis you will be hearing this news that Houthis have closed this Strait of Bab el-Mandeb in upcoming days, and with the already closing the Strait of Hormuz. And then if you are seeing the effects of that the prices of oil are jumping, are skyrocketing, and of those of gas as well, and the whole supply chain is disrupted and whole trade is disrupted, and it is like the when the prices of oil skyrocket, the day-to-day things and other industries, they also, the prices of that raw materials and day-to-day things and medicines and health and all, they also skyrocket, and generally every country of the world suffers. And we have seen this in this month when Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, and you can well imagine that if Houthis close the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, then 12% trade happened to that trade route as well. And so with the both of the straits closed, if the both of the straits remain closed, then you can clearly configure that 32% of the trade of whole world is by these two trade routes. And if these two trade routes remain closed for a month, then the things would be out of control of everyone, and that would be a disaster for the global economy, and the prices would be skyrocketing of everything, and there would be shortages of fuel and of every kind of fuel, whether it's gas and oil and every kind of fuel, shortages and price hikes, and that would be the economies of the world would be collapsing, and the stock exchange would be collapsing, the business would be running, would be taking dips, and so that would be not a good for the world, as every country would be affected by this. So you see here the where the things are going, and this all needs to be and this all needs to be stopped, so that not everyone should suffer. And in these countries are not only the countries who are fighting are suffering, but the countries who are far away and who are not part of this war are also suffering, and the people are suffering. So and seeing these situation, there is basically negotiating, trying, the four countries are basically 3 to 4 countries are trying that negotiation is should be reached out, and a ceasefire agreement should be reached out between Iran, US, and Israel. And the countries trying for negotiations are Egypt and Turkey and Pakistan, and these countries are trying hard and playing their role that ceasefire agreements should reach between these countries, and so that basically to control all what is happening, and so that the prices of oil shouldn't go more up, and the situation should return normal, and the situation should return normal. And we are reading your comments, and we have a comment that no ceasefire, please get IRGC out of Iran. It's not Islamic. The ceasefire talks do are who cares? I buy from local farmers only, and we have electric car and biodiesel truck, so we are good. Shut it down. Let all those items happen. If you do have electric cars, I know, and that run on batteries, and indirectly, it's not only about oil. And that oil transfer is halted, which is happening through the Strait of Hormuz. Indirectly, there are raw materials in the trades, and every kind of raw material to run those industries which are making these batteries and these electric cars. Even those will come to a halt, and with the prices skyrocketing, you can't afford the maintenance of these things. You can't be getting the food, and the food chains would also be disrupted. You can't be getting energy, and the energy would be like increasing. The prices would be increasing. So indirectly, even if you say that you have electric cars and biodiesel trucks, so you will be suffering too as well, because yes, the impact of those who don't rely on these infrastructures in those oils, and who basically don't live in cities but live in far off villages, and who are not yet so affected. These people who don't rely on these technology and gadgets and oils and so stuff like that, they would be suffering later on the stage if the war gets prolonged. But the suffering, they would too suffer. It's just a matter of time, and I hope this doesn't happen. And but indirectly, you will also face the effects and the consequences of it. And it's not like that. And with this, please do comment and share your thoughts, and let's check that how many people have voted. 85 people have voted to our question, that will Houthis be able to inflict damage to Israel and US. And out of those 85 votes, 81% of the people say yes, Houthis will be able to inflict damage to US and Israel, and 20% of the people say that no, and they won't be able to inflict damage to US and Israel. When are we going to figure out the stop of killing each other for nothing? We are reading your comments, and we will be replying if you have questions. And yes, do share your opinions and thoughts as well. And let's come back to the topic again and show you some visuals that these are protests against the government have started in Bahrain. And this is basically why it's happening, because people in Bahrain, and there is a good chunk of people who support Iran. And while the Bahrain's government is holding US Navy's Fifth Fleet, and US has troops over there, and US basically uses their airspaces, and the US has bases over it with US uses, and US bombs Iran. So, and in retaliation, Iran bombs Bahrain back. And so the people there who support Iran are basically, they don't agree with the government of Bahrain, and so they are protesting against the government of Bahrain, and the protests have started against the government of Bahrain. So this is the situation of Bahrain, which we have shared with you. And with this, we request you to please subscribe the channel and like the video as well, and share your thoughts and opinions in the comments as well. And let's move to some more news. That these are the visuals from Bahrain which we have showed you. And this Iran has been firing rockets and drones towards the Gulf countries as well. And Iran has the stance that we have informed these countries pre-war. Iran has said that we had already warned these countries before the starting of the war. We have warned these countries that if you allow US to use its airspaces from these countries, if you allow your airspaces and bases against us, meaning thereby against Iran, then we will be attacking back on these bases, and this attack will not be on you on your countries, but will be on the basis of US. So Iran had already warned pre-war. Iran had warned pre-war these Gulf states, and so that's why when still the attacks were coming from those countries against Iran, then Iran retaliated and attacked the bases of US in these countries. And with this, Iran has said that the attacks Iran would stop attacking these Gulf countries, including Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Oman, and UAE and Saudi Arabia. Iran would be stopping its attack on these countries if these countries don't allow its airspace and bases, don't allow the US to use the airspaces and bases against Israel, against Iran, so Iran wouldn't be attacking them back. So this is the demand from Iran. And why did Iran attack? This was the statement from the foreign minister Araghchi. He said that we attacked UAE's Fujairah facility and the Citibank because it's this is basically few 1 to 2 weeks before when Iran hit with its drone the Fujairah oil facility, and Iran said that because the oil facility, the oil and gas facility, which US hit in Iran, the gas facility, and basically the bases of UAE were used against Iran, in which US hit the gas and oil facility of Iran. So US used the bases of UAE. So Iran said that that's why we attacked the oil facilities of Fujairah in UAE. So this was basically the news, and let's come back to the Houthis. And I have already told you that Houthis have jumped into this war, and it's the 30th day of the war, and the Houthis have jumped into this war. They have fired missiles towards Israel, and you'll be soon hearing news in a couple of days that Houthis have closed the Strait of Bab el-Mandab. The Strait of Bab el-Mandab is strategically choke point, and it's the same. The effects would be same as that of the Strait of Hormuz, and the Strait of Hormuz lies near Iran, but the Strait of Bab el-Mandab lies near Yemen, and the Strait of Hormuz accounts of 20% of the trade supply happens through it, but 12% of the global trade supply happens through the Strait of Bab el-Mandab, and Houthis have some good arsenal of ballistic missiles and drones, and they have fast attack speedboats as well. So they are well equipped in that sense, and they have the capacity to block the Strait of Hormuz. And once they block the Strait of the Strait of Bab el-Mandab, they have the capacity to block the Strait of Bab el-Mandab, and once they block the Strait of Bab el-Mandab, you can clearly see the effects of those, that 32% of the supply of the whole world and trade of the whole world would be disrupted with these two straits closed. So the prices of oil and gas would be skyrocketing, and along with the prices increase, there would be inflation and economic disaster, and also the oil and countries would be kind of running low on oil and gas, alongside the increase in these prices. Let's read some more visuals, comments of. Let's read some more comments. Which you people are. The Iran's massive said hi. Trump is complete. Want to make NATO complicit in this crime. Talking about NATO, we have a comment that Trump wants NATO to jump in this war, and the fool who would end the Ukraine over the phone and started the new war. We have a comment that regarding NATO, that President Trump has isn't happy with NATO. He basically has said that NATO hasn't helped the US in this war, and President Trump isn't happy with the NATO, and he says that the future of NATO is uncertain, and he also requested the NATO countries, especially France, Germany, and some other countries including Japan, and he requested these countries to come forward and even even Canada. He requested these countries to come forward and to at least join the war as far as the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is concerned. The Trump and Spain as well. How can we forget Spain? And Trump asked these countries to come forward and help the U.S. in opening the Strait of Hormuz, as it's not the only U.S. which is suffering, and other countries, also NATO countries, are also suffering. But these NATO countries refuse to enter the war. These NATO countries refuse to enter the war, and these NATO countries refused to enter the war. And with the first one, the Spain, was that Spain also refused to enter this war. Alongside Spain, also said that we wouldn't be entering this war, and we wouldn't be even allowing our airspaces. We wouldn't be allowing that our airspaces be used by US against Iran. So Trump was very angry on this statement of the Prime Minister of Spain. And President Trump then commented on this statement of Spain that he doesn't need the permission from Spain, and if he wants to use the airspace of Spain, he can use it without asking prior permission. This was the statement of President Trump then, when the Spanish Prime Minister refused to allow the use of its airspace against Iran. So the days passed by, and then Germany and France also refused to join into the war, and also said no to the President Donald Trump when he asked that NATO's countries should join and help US in opening the Strait of Hormuz. So with that, the NATO countries refused to join this war, and they did issue a joint statement asking Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, but Iran said no, we won't be opening the Strait of Hormuz. President Donald Trump threatened Iran that if Iran doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz, the power plants of Iran would be attacked. And President Trump gave the ultimatum of yesterday, the Friday that has passed, that the power plants of Iran would be attacked. And Iran immediately refused and said that we are not intimidated by these threats, and we will not open the Strait of Hormuz. And then we heard some the strait is open. The US and Israelis don't want to pay. I'm reading your comments. The strait is open for other countries and not to US and Israel. Iran has clearly stated that the Strait of Hormuz is closed for US and Israel and its allies, and but it's open for other countries, and with the condition that the countries who want their oil and stuff to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, they should call Iran prior to passing through the Strait of Hormuz. They should basically seek permission of Iran, and also should pay $2 million per tanker for the safe passage from the Strait of Hormuz. So Iran is basically using that Strait of Hormuz now strategically, and Iran is using that Strait of Hormuz. And Iran is using the Strait of Hormuz. And now we have some more news that three countries are trying to mediate between US, Israel, and Iran, and these countries are Egypt, Turkey, and Pakistan. And on Monday, this is big news, that on Monday, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt and Pakistan and their basically foreign ministers would be gathering and would be discussing this Iran war, and they would be possibly discussing this Iran war and starting some negotiations. So they would be playing role to start some negotiations between Iran and the US and Israel. And on Monday, Pakistan would be in headlines, and as the foreign ministers of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt would be gathering in Islamabad. So Islamabad would be in headlines on Monday. And let's see what would be the news coming after these foreign ministers meeting in Islamabad. And we'll share with you that news as well when we have. And for now, the news is that on Monday, the foreign ministers of Iran, the foreign ministers of Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey are meeting in Islamabad and discussing the Iran war and trying to negotiate and mediate between Iran and Israel and US. Let's read some more comments. Rest assured, Israel and America will win because the Iranian people want their victory over the Islamic regime. Houthis bodies. I'm reading your comments as well, and please do also take part in the poll which we have conducted, that will Houthis be able to inflict damage to USA and Israel or not. And up till now, 162 votes have been 162 people have voted, and out of 162, 72% of the people think yes, and 28 people think no. So please, the request to it's not up to the USA to teach a regime to a country of please do subscribe the channel and like the video as well, and please do subscribe the channel and like the video as well, as we are providing you the latest news and updates on Iran war, and the reports are unverified, and we provide you analysis from education and documentary point of view, and following strongly the YouTube community guidelines. These are the visuals from when oil reservoirs were attacked in Iran, and when visuals from Iran when oil reservoirs were attacked by Israel and US. Visuals from Iran. These are the visuals from Iran, and now let's discuss some of the Strait of the Bab el Mandab. As I was just telling you that why Houthis have you ever thought that why Houthis have joined this war now? Why have they joined this war now, and why haven't they joined this war earlier, and why they have joined this war after a month now? This is basically a strategy by Iran, that Iran wants for Israel to be busy at multiple fronts. Israel is already fighting against Iran. Israel is already busy fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah, and now Houthis, Israel will be busy fighting at another front, that is the Houthis in Yemen. So Iran wanted the forces of Israel to overstretch and to be busy at multiple fronts, and so that and also Iran wanted the air defense systems of Israel to be overburdened when they will be intercepting the missiles from different countries, from Lebanon, from Iran, and from Yemen now. So the air defenses of what you call Israel, air defenses of Israel would be overburdened, and Israel would be running low on interceptor missiles. This is the calculation of Iran, so that's why they signaled to Houthis to jump into the war now, and this is basically the strategy to overburden the air defenses of Israel and to overstretch the Israeli army so that they are busy at multiple fronts now. So this is basically the plan of Iran, and which they have executed and trying to execute. And we have talks of negotiations as well. We have news that 3 countries are trying to mediate between Iran and Israel and US, and let me put the points which both sides have laid down for negotiations, and these points are number one, that from Iran, let's start from Iranian side. Iran wants that U.S. should pay for all the damage they have done to Iranian civilian infrastructure and buildings. This is number one. Demand number one from Iran is that U.S. should pay for all the damage that the U.S. and Israel have done to the civilian infrastructure of Iran. That includes the damage done to the gas fields and oil fields and the power plants as well. And with number two is that U.S. should recognize the control of Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. should recognize the control of Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. And number three is that U.S. should recognize the control of Strait of Hormuz, Iran's control of Strait of Hormuz. Point number three is that U.S. and Israel should stop this war immediately, and they should also stop this war against Hezbollah and PMF, and in Iraq that is a Popular Mobilization Force, also a proxy of Iran, and they should stop this war against these and also against Palestine, and no future act of aggression against these countries, including Palestine, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iraq and Iran, with the international countries guaranteeing it. And this is number four. And the number five is basically that no future act of aggression will be against these countries. And number five is that that Iran would be allowed to continue with its missile program and with its peaceful civilian nuclear energy program. With peaceful civilian nuclear energy program, Iran means that they won't be making nukes with this enriched uranium, but they would be using it for their energy purposes and energy production. So this is from Iranian side, that what Iran is asking and demanding. And we also have news that what America is demanding and the US is demanding. The conditions and demands from US are that Iran should immediately limit the range of its missiles. Iran should limit the range of its missiles. Iran should stop enriching its uranium and should stop its nuclear program. And Iran should allow IAEA for regular inspection on monthly basis, for regular inspection of its nuclear facilities. And another demand is that Iran should immediately open the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran should stop militarizing Hezbollah and Houthis, and should stop aiding these groups. So these are the conditions from US side. Let's now read your comments. I think Trump should pay North American taxpayer and the whole Republican Party. And there is a comment, and I'm reading one of the comment that Friends Up is saying that I think Trump and Israel should both pay, but not with American taxpayers. The whole Republican Party should be paying it. Let's have another comment. Rest assured, Israel and America will win because Iranian people want it. Iran already capitulated all those things. We know that in America. And who brought this madman who just said the U.S. Senate and did not accept the election laws? Who brought? We have comments and reading your comments here, and that we have a comment that say that now please do yes, it is very sad. That was a very sad and condemnable incident that happened when at the first day of the war, a primary school in Minab in Iran was bombed and by Israel and US, in which 167 innocent children were martyred, and their ages were between 7 to 12, and this was very, very sad and tragic. May their souls rest in peace. And this was very sad, as the children are innocent, and even war should have some rules, and these children shouldn't be schools, the hospitals, and the children's and the elderly people, they shouldn't be attacked, and they shouldn't be killed in the wars, from both sides. But we know of the incident this happened, and when President Trump was asked the question that why did this happen, and the reply was that Iran did it, and he said also that Pete Hegg said that we are investigating this. So that was a heartbreaking incident, and this shouldn't be happening from any side. We have votes now, 220 votes on the question that will Houthis be able to inflict damage to US and Israel. 220 votes. 70 people think yes, and 30 people think no. Now, we are reading your comments as well, and let's move towards some more visuals, and these are the visuals from Bahrain, and I have already told you the situation in Bahrain is that many people in Bahrain think that Iran is justified defending it and bombing the US bases in Bahrain, but the government of Bahrain is basically helping US against Iran, and allowing the use of bases, and so the people are protesting against the government, and the situation is getting tense there. Many people have protested there, and these are the visuals when the Bahrainians have basically protested against their government and in favor of Iran. These are the visuals when Bahrainians have showed support for Iran, and they have protested against their government, and then they think that their government is at the wrong side by allowing the US the use of the bases. My question was that will the Strait of Bab el Mandab be closed or not? Our analysis is that the Strait of Bab el Mandab will be closed. You will be hearing this news within a couple of days that the Strait of Bab el Mandab is now closed. Then the situation would be, you would be very familiar with the situation that you already know that the situation when the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and when with the 20% of that disappeared, with the 20% trade has been halted, and if the Strait of Bab el Mandab gets closed too, this global 32% of the trade which depends upon these two straits will be disrupted, and the result would be a price hike in oil and energy, and decrease in the trade, and halt in the trade would mean the inflation and economic disaster for not only the countries who are fighting, but for those countries who are not even the part of this war. These are massive airstrikes in Tehran. These are massive airstrikes in Tehran when Israel and US bombed Tehran. And these are the visuals which we are showing to you, that massive strikes against Iran in Tehran. Yesterday, also 2 to 3 steel plants were targeted, and we have seen many times the civilian infrastructure being hit in this war, and civilian infrastructure included and that of Iran's, at first Iran's oil facilities were targeted, then Iran's gas facility were targeted, and the Kharg Island was also targeted, where Iran has stored its oil, and the gas facility were targeted. When the gas facility was targeted, that gas facility of Iran was not only the biggest in Iran, but one of the biggest in the world, and 75% of energy Iran depended on that gas facility, and now power plants and steel plants are targeted of Iran are targeted, and Iran also has targeted the oil facilities of UAE, and oil facilities and oil tankers storage sites in Kuwait, and Iran has also targeted the Qatar's LNG, Qatar's gas plants, damaging 17%, and Qatar would be needing 5 years to build that damaged part of its facility. So we are seeing here Iran has also targeted the electric power plant and Haifa oil facility. Israel says that not much damage has been inflicted to those, and no significant damage was done to the Haifa oil facility. This was Israeli's stance of Israel, and but we have seen this, that the point is that we are seeing that civilian infrastructure is also being targeted in this war alongside the military infrastructure. So with these news, this is let's move towards some more news. This is Iran being targeted, and let's now read your comments, and let's see. We have now 246 votes, and the question was that will Houthis be able to inflict damage to USA and Israel? And we have 246 votes, and now 68 people percent of the people say that yes, and 32 people percent of the people say no. And these are the latest visuals which we are showing you, that allegedly a building belonging to IRGC was damaged following the airstrikes on Saturday. This is the latest visuals, that IRGC buildings were damaged. Buildings belonging to IRGC were hit by Israel and US. These are the latest visuals when the buildings related to IRGC and the buildings related to IRGC were hit and damaged by Israel and US. So this is the news that the buildings related to IRGC were damaged and hit by Israel and US. These are the visuals which we are showing you, that the IRGC buildings were targeted by US and Israel in Tehran. Please do subscribe the channel and like the video as well, and do share your thoughts in the comments. Do also take part in the poll, and it's time for us to now take a little break, and we'll be back when we have more news. So take care of yourselves.